Hey guys, welcome to Hope Rescue Podcast. I'm Kimberly. This is my sweet husband, Tim.
Yes.
Tim Scott.
Tim Scott.
I was going to say Timberly, but that's weird.
Oh, that is so
and
weird.
we are jumping into our series. Today's topic is what kind of influencer you are as a parent.
Yeah, parenting is not for the weak at
of
heart.
And yet everybody, almost everybody,
A lot of people
do it or are very familiar with the challenges.
Yeah, and I think no matter who you are, you kind of bring your game.
Sure.
Because you
And the
never
game-
loved anybody so much.
Right.
in
And the
your life.
game is usually
Yeah.
what you learned by how your parents raised you,
Yeah.
which is why we are having this conversation, because that's not always the right, or, you want to either be intentionally do things different than how you were raised, or you fall into the same patterns of how you were raised.
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
yeah.
Well, we have developed some traditions.
Yes.
Everybody has traditions that they do. One of the things that we do is we have family night every week. Usually it's on Monday night, but sometimes it's on Sunday, depending on schedule. And we have a son in the military, one that's studying for different things. And so they sometimes get tied up, but we always have that. And the neat thing about that is the way we try to love each other well in that. And we're very specific about how we do that. What do we do?
Well, I will say, not to set people up for like this impossible goal.
Well, this is easy.
Family night came about by prioritizing time together
Right.
with a meal. And along with that, like you've talked before about like it's not quality versus quantity. You get quality time by making time for your kids. Sometimes those family nights are a bust.
Yeah.
And most of the time they're not for us, which is great. But we have found that even now, when we talk about family night, people think, well, you must have a bunch of kids still growing up at home. We have one kid left at home. The rest are all grown adults.
Yeah.
So there is something beautiful that's happened over time by us making it a priority where they want to come home on Monday nights from their jobs and their work and their school and spend time together. And one of the things, what were you going to say? You're about to jump
Well,
in.
I was just going to say, and you kind of dealt with that. For people to understand, we have a teenager who's almost 18. She graduates in a couple of months. But the thing about that is that we have adult kids, and it's hard to be intentional getting your kids together. And so one of the things that we do, I think is really powerful, is that we usually we'll go around the table. You usually come up with some pretty good discussion ideas, but especially on special days or if we have a guest, what do you appreciate about this person?
Right.
And
So-
everybody shares one or two things, and it's really a powerful
so
thing.
it's simply, especially for special occasions like Mother's Day, Father's Day, birthdays, always. And now we have girlfriends and significant others, so we acknowledge whoever's birthday. Some in the summertime we have birthdays back to back, which is crazy. But we take the time to go around the table. We call it around the table, and each person says intentionally a couple of things that they love and appreciate or respect about that person. And it's been a tradition for years, for 13 years since we've been married. And it is the sweetest, most beautiful thing to see your family members who, especially our boys, they're like all tough guys, they're all very kind of lean into testosterone, but to hear them
They say sweet
express
stuff,
so eloquently what
Yeah.
they love and appreciate about each other and the rest of the family. And it trains your kids. They're modeling, learning how to speak words of life to each other. It's very cool.
If you want to be an influencer, one of the best ways to do that is encourage.
Yes.
And it gives you credibility. It gives you that influence capital. And so one of the things that I think is really cool that Mario and Carrie, our oldest daughter and her husband, Mario, they do this thing called high-low. And every day the kids share what their high was and what their low was. And sometimes one of them, I won't say which, will go, well, my low was this. Well, what was your high? No, that was it too. Oh, I
was
guess my high and my low are the same thing. He's one of those guys.
He's a teenager now.
Yeah, a teenager, right. So anyway, this is a really powerful thing to influence our children. That's a lifetime relationship, and the payback is amazing. When you love your kids well, when they're adults, they become awesome people
Right.
in your life.
And the goal of parenting ultimately is your mission and your purpose is to raise healthy children and not kids that just survive childhood,
Or
which is
parents that survive
right.
childhood.
Or yes,
Yeah,
exactly. Marriages and parenting that survives childhood. You want them to thrive. And so many of the tools that they're going to learn is going to be caught, not taught by like these moments of setting it aside strategic moments where you can encourage each other. And as parents, I feel like we've been intentional, or we've tried to be intentional, not always perfectly, but to do that.
One of the struggles that I had as a young father was I was trying to get the kids to obey me more than I was trying to get the kids to grow up.
Right.
And I think that's a huge mistake that parents make, especially young parents. I want my kids to look good, and I want to look good as a parent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my kids behave in places that may embarrass me. And what they do is like in restaurants or at church or, it's bring your child to work day and you want your child to behave, and they misbehave because they're childish. They're children. They act like children.
Right.
So try to be careful to let your children be children and enjoy their different stages of life.
Right. And their unique personalities. One of the things I've seen with parenting that it hurts my heart is comparing siblings in front of them.
Yeah.
And because God has made each one with their own strengths and unique weaknesses, but celebrating their unique strengths and not comparing, well, your sister always did her homework by da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
Trust me, they're going to do enough of that among themselves. But as parents, we need to be careful not to do that. So,
well, over the years, I've been a pastor for over 40 years. Hard to talk about, I guess. But anyway, in that time, I have dedicated to the Lord. I can't even imagine how many babies and children that I've dedicated to the Lord. In some cases, parents that came to the Lord later on in life and they dedicated their teenagers.
I love that.
And yeah, it's awesome. And I know for me, it was a real challenge to really get inside of what to say and something that's new. But one of the passages that I dealt with most of the time was Psalm 127.
Yeah.
And I'm going to read it for you because if you want to enjoy your kids, this is a formula of how to enjoy your children at different stages. We have a little grandson right now that's 6 months old, and he is just delightful.
He's so much fun.
And even when he's not delightful, we enjoy him.
Yes.
So how do you enjoy kids at different stages when they're teenagers and so forth? Listen to this passage. Unless the Lord builds the house, those who build labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. It is in vain that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil, for he gives to his beloved sleep. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. And we have filled our quiver. We have 7.
Packed quiver.
Yeah. He shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies in the gates. And so there's really 5 things in there. The first one is building the house. So he starts by, you build the house. You could be a master builder, but if the Lord doesn't build the house, it's vanity. So, and this is in the context of children being a heritage from the Lord. That is not That is not a coincidence that came up in that passage. He's building this context of how to enjoy children. If all you do is in your own wisdom are trying to teach your kids and control your kids and maneuver your kids into maturity, unless the Lord is involved in that, it is in vain. One of the things that you did, and I learned this right when we got married, is every morning the kids would get up and they would see you with your Bible open and you had Christian music on.
Yeah, that was my quiet sanity time before they woke up and the chaos began. However, the upside to that is so many of them would kind of sprinkle in on their own and join me. And I love that Even my older sons now start their day the same way.
Yeah.
And I always had a candle lit, which is, there's no, juju in that, but it creates an atmosphere. So having
Juju?
worship, juju. Yeah.
Is that like,
isn't
that some kind of like satanic worship or something?
Well,
Juju?
no, there was nothing weird. Like, no, I didn't have like my sage going or anything like that kind of juju.
Wow.
But a nice candle worship and some, I would literally it was like snack size amounts of devotions is how much time I had in my life, especially as a single mom.
Yeah.
But it really anchored my day. And it's beautiful that ended up being something that translated. And even our 18-year-old now, we get up early every school morning and we do the very same thing.
I love this. I sometimes will come in. I usually am gone by the time, the kids, because I get up real early. But in the last couple of years, I've had some opportunities to come in and listen to you and Gracie, our youngest, and you're sharing, hey, listen to this verse, or you'd share it with one of the boys, or Cassie, one of our daughter-in-law, or Carrie, or whomever, and it's really a powerful thing. So the first thing that you have to do if you want to enjoy your children is make sure that the Lord is involved in that. The second one is, it says that the watchman stays awake in vain unless the Lord watches over the city. So, you can be worried about catastrophic things happening politically or, especially in this day and age of terrorism. And so you're living in fear. But listen, the Lord is watching over the city. The Lord is watching over your home. And we labor in vain without the Lord. So those first two are really strong about, building a house and protecting that house. It really, God is involved in that. He is going to protect your home. Let him be the center of your home. The third one is, it says that he said, let's see, let's find it here in verse 2. It is in vain that you rise up early and go to bed late, eating the bread of anxious toil. Think about how many
anxiety.
parents, how many parents in the middle of the night are worried about their kids.
Yeah.
That anxiety, when the Lord is involved, for he gives to his beloved sleep, it says. And that sleep is powerful because that sleep is something that God is providing because you are trusting him. He's in charge. Yeah. Because he's building the house.
Right.
He's watching over the house. So your kids are going to be good.
Yeah.
And if you want to enjoy your children, worry is really not going to change their behavior. You need to give quality input and trust that God is going to work in their lives. So it's a powerful thing. The next one, it says that, behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. And a lot of times it feels exactly the opposite because you think about, no parent, especially mom, has ever had a baby and the labor's over and you get that beautiful little baby lying there and you go, this child is going to be the nightmare in my life. You just have all this hope for the future.
Yeah.
But they're a heritage. They're meant to be, especially when this was written, sons and daughters were considered the legacy.
Right.
And, of all the things that I've done in my life, everything, nothing compares with the influence I've had in our 7 children.
Yes,
and
so
our
true.
the in-laws, the children-in-law, the daughter-in-law, and
it's our first ministry.
Yeah, our son-in-law, and it's a powerful thing, and you see that influence. They are a heritage. They are a reward.
Legacy. Yep.
You want to enjoy them, then you're going to have to see them as a heritage,
right,
and be thankful for them. And the last one is, it says, blessed is the man who has his quiver full. And so, and he brags about them in the gate, a full quiver today is unacceptable.
Wait a minute.
Well, it is. You think about,
compared to biblical times, yes.
Well, yes.
But everybody's quiver is a different size.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that you need to have a lot of kids. That's not what I'm saying. But if you have 1 or 2 children, that's kind of considered in our society.
Sure, a full quiver.
Enough today. Yeah. But whatever that quiver size is, it doesn't matter. You just need to know that they're a heritage, they're a blessing to you. I was in China just thinking about this as I was talking about a quiver full. And I was in there before they changed the regulation about having children. You could only have 1 child in China.
Yeah.
I was talking to my friend Marcus Jones, who just got back from China with his daughter. And they have changed that now. So but he's involved in some of the adoption issues and so forth, and was there to kind of look into that, and a cool missionary trip. And a lot of the children that are, with children with special needs,
Sure.
are not adopted. But even a child with special needs is part of that quiver.
Yes,
is part of the
legacy.
joy.
Yeah,
the
heritage.
challenges. So I think that there are 5 mistakes that parents make in raising children, and we're going to kind of unpack some that we think, and there's probably many, many more that you could come up with, but these are our 5 that we want to share with you. The first one is, we parents worry about the small things. And I wanted to state this because I wanted to honor you, because you don't get upset about the small things. I do. I'm like, are you kidding me? You didn't close the bathroom door? Are you kidding me? You didn't put the toothpaste away? Are you kidding me? You borrowed the tools and didn't put them back? I worry about those little things. I don't worry about them. I get upset about those little things. You seem to just kind of roll with that. Why is that?
I think we're a good balance, though, because I feel like when you came into my life as a single mom with 5 kids, I felt like chaos reigned. And I always say I'm kind of the type that colors outside the lines, and I have a very, I'm very relationship driven. So that always comes first over the systems and operations. But the beautiful part you brought into our life, especially for my sons who will someday be providing for their families and all of that, it was order and structure, and they were craving it. And they talk about that. They give kudos to you, because all of those boys have grown up to be very disciplined and structured, and that's been a positive thing. But I don't worry about the small things as much, and that probably has been honestly a point of contention for us as a couple through the years, because I don't sweat the small stuff. And I feel like with the amount of energy you have, why would you spend negative energy on something that small? Save it up for something really good.
So I want them to be responsible. I want them to be responsible. If you borrow somebody's car, when you bring it back, it needs to have a full tank, or at least the same amount of gas as you had in there when you got it. When you borrow a tool, bring it back. I know those are small things, but they go to that whole discipline issue.
Which is valuable.
Yeah. And so that's the first thing. We parents worry about small things oftentimes. Pick your battles.
Right.
Don't sweat the small stuff. I think that's the first one.
Yeah. And the other one is, we parents make child training more about us than the child. Now, connecting that concept with what we just talked about, some parents, and maybe, I don't know if this has ever been a struggle for you in those areas, is we feel like if our kids don't, return the car or with the gas full, or if they don't close the bathroom door or turn on the fan, I mean, the little things, that somehow it reflects back on us as a person and our poor parenting. So you have to, at some point, step back and say, I've done my job in training them properly. I can't continue to attach my identity, or shouldn't be attaching my identity and how I'm defined in parenting to the child's mistakes, because all you can do is your best in the process.
Yeah, years ago, there was a guy that had he was, I don't know what his role was in the cemetery, but he was like the caretaker of it. I don't know, caretaker, whatever.
Undertaker.
Anyway, he wasn't the undertaker, but he had a responsibility for the property, and he didn't want us walking through that. But he went to our church, and when he went to the church, he had this tendency to tell my dad if we went through there. And we liked going through there because it was a shortcut to our house.
Yeah.
And one of the things that was really tough was, it was such a long way around the corner to get, or around the cemetery to get to our house. So we wanted to sneak through there.
Sure.
And one day I had snuck through there. I was racing my brother, and I got through there, and he told on me. My younger brother, Phil.
What a punk.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't. He was just mad that I beat him. Anyway, and so my dad disciplined me quite harshly, and I don't want to get into the details of that, but he disciplined me really harshly, and I knew that the reason he did was he was embarrassed. And that's what you mean. That's what we mean by parents need to train their children. It needs to be more about their development than about the parents themselves.
Right.
So when I was a kid, I was never allowed to run in the quote sanctuary, which was the church auditorium.
Yeah.
I see that as a morally neutral thing now. I was taught it was God's house. It's only God's house when God's people are there. But anyway, if I would run in there, it was an embarrassment to my dad and my mom. And so they would scold us for that.
Right.
So
yeah, and which leads to the next thing, which is sometimes we can punish our kids for just being kids rather than what we should be punishing them for. When I say punish, discipline.
For being childish.
We should be disciplining them for issues of rebellion versus them just being childish and goofy and making mistakes. And I think those two need to be separated because it's so damaging when we overreact with our words to things that just don't matter in the big picture.
Yeah, one of the things I think is that there's a distinction between punishment and discipline.
For sure.
Punishment always looks back at behavior and says, this is the penalty you're going to pay for that behavior. Whereas discipline says, this is the behavior you did, and I want you to look to the future with an alternative perspective and a change. And so discipline always looks forward to the change that child needs to make. Punishment looks back. And if that simple acknowledgement, when you're disciplining your kids, that simple acknowledgement will help you not to overreact and take them to a place where they have, gotten overly punished.
Right.
And your kids need to know there's hope for the future.
Yes.
So when I disciplined the kids when they were little, I would make sure that after the discipline was over, they said, look, now that's done. Now you're moving to the future. We're not going to bring this up anymore.
Yes.
And I would tell, especially my oldest daughter, who is tough to raise, I would tell her, okay, this is over, and I'm not going to bring it up. And if ever I brought it up, she goes, you said you weren't going to bring it up. and it's really important in raising children to make them help them look to the future through discipline for correction of behavior for a new future.
Right. Absolutely. Well, it makes me think actually just recently what happened when we went to dinner this last Sunday with our blended family and our little newest grandson was there. And the difference between like obviously disciplining or punishing them out of childishness versus rebellion. Well, he was that kid in the restaurant during lunch where he wasn't angry or upset. He's only 6 months old, but he started to do like this funny screaming thing, and his face was like his dimples were so deep, and he saw the reaction he was getting, and he was feeding off of it, And in those moments, you don't go after them for being a kid.
Yeah.
You distract them.
Yeah.
But you don't yell at them or get mean or spank for issues like that.
Yeah, a 6-month-old child is not going to know because he's just having fun.
Yeah.
It's so cute for him to try to get a reaction. And to be honest with you, when he's here, Kimberly babysits him a couple of days a week, which is our joy to have him here. And I'll go, and he'll do that same thing back, and he's mimicking. So it's kind of a fun thing. And then to discipline him for something that you've encouraged, he just doesn't know that you're not supposed to do it there. So
messages.
That's that whole idea of childishness versus rebellion. You need to know the difference between when a child is being rebellious and when a child is being childish. Children, it's okay for them to be childish. You kind of shape that behavior in the right ways. But when there's rebellion, you need to deal with that rebellion.
Absolutely.
So in the fifth mistake that parents make is they overreact to situations because it's not based on their values. And that's probably one of the most important things we can do or avoid is avoiding making up rules as you go along. This frustrates kids so much. Like, we used to have this rule, now we have this rule. Yeah. Don't make up rules.
We made that mistake a few times.
I've made that mistake more than a few.
I've made that mistake.
And instead of just going, this is what our values are, these are the rules, and these are what you're going to be held accountable for. Right. So I think that's really the key thing. So, hey, folks, next time we're going to be having a special podcast. Kimberly and I did a talk for the East Lake network of churches and to all the churches, and we talked about blended families.
Right, and parenting in a blended family.
Yeah, parenting in a blended family. And we'll be talking, we'll be sharing that. And then for the next several weeks after that, we'll be talking about blended families. So whether you're a blended family or not, there's going to be a lot of details about how you can raise your kids and even your grandkids, be influencers there. So we hope you'll join us on that. It's been so good to have you with us at Hope Rescue Podcast. Join us every week. Invite friends. Would you do that? Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.